All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll get started. So welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Thames Centre. The date is September 25th, 2023. The time is 5 p.m. and we're located in the Municipal Office Council Chambers at 4305 Hamilton Road, Dorchester, Ontario. It's 5 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order. I don't believe there are any additions to the agenda and any disclosure of pecuniary interest from any member of council. Okay, seeing none. I actually do have a couple of announcements tonight. First of all, I'd like to give a really big thank you and shout out to the organizers this past weekend of the Thorndale Fall Fair. It was a really good event. The pie auction lived up to its reputation. A significant donation was made, so I know that that's going to help the fair board. The weather cooperated, the parade route was lined, so it was just a really good event. Secondly, Thames Centre Fire Department will be participating in the Saved by the Beep campaign. This is the poster, and if anyone would like a little bit more information, there are some little flyers on the table where you signed in. So if you'd like one, you can help yourself. This campaign is on September the 28th of 2023, and brought to the office here by the fire marshal. It's as a result of the overwhelming number of fire deaths in the province last year, signifying a heavy response from the fire safety educators and the fire prevention camps. The campaign is all about promoting checking your home's smoke alarms, changing the batteries on a regular basis, and ensuring that your alarms are replaced every 10 years. We find that people are also still unaware of the provincial law to have working smoke alarms on every floor of the home, as well as working CO alarms on every floor of the home where people sleep. This campaign will see the the Thames Centre Fire Department, I'll say that out loud so we all know, staff at several locations in the community through the day and night with signs and literature to reflect the important messages. So just remember, I think we do it in our house when the clocks change, then they get changed. So, okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is just a little message regarding we're into the fall harvest season, and that brings an increased use of farm equipment on the roads in Thames Centre. So just a reminder that over the next couple of months, please be cognizant, patient, and vigilant to ensure a safe and successful harvest. Okay, I think that is it in terms of announcements. So at this point, we'll move on to the public portion of planning, and that I'm going to ask for a motion that council adjourn its regular meeting at 5:03 p.m. and move into public meetings pursuant to the Planning Act to consider applications listed on the September 25th, 2023 council agenda. Anyone wishing to, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the spot here. Any mover, Deputy Mayor Smyberg, and seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? That motion carries. Anyone wishing to be notified of a decision with respect to any planning decisions made, please submit a written request to the clerk's office. The first item on the agenda is item 5.1, consent agenda B15-23, and zoning bylaw amendment application Z 22-23. Douglas McMillan and Paul McMillan are the applicants. Henshaw Farms Inc. is the agent, and the property as 20887 Cherry Hill Road. And full disclosure, there's no relation to me. All right, so I'll call on Ilana to do the overview of the application.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. My name's Alana Cortez, and I'm a planner with the County of Middlesex, and I provide planning advisory services to Thames Center. So the purpose of the consent application is to facilitate the disposal of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of a pending farm consolidation. The purpose of the rezoning application is to rezone the balance of the farm to prohibit any new residential use. The subject property is a 30-acre farm situated on the west side of Cherry Hill Road, north of Evelyn Drive. The lands are designated agricultural according to the Thames Center official plan and are zoned agricultural according to the Thames Center zoning bylaw. The property is used primarily for the cultivation of field crops and contains a single detached dwelling and a garden shed. The dwelling is serviced by a private well and septic system. The applicant's agent has an offer to purchase the farmland, being the severed lands, and the applicant would retain ownership of the dwelling, being the lands to be retained. The lands to be severed would have a frontage of approximately 35 meters along Cherry Hill Road and an area of approximately 28.86 acres. The severed lands are to be rezoned from the agricultural A zone to the site-specific A-45 zone to prohibit any future residential development. The lands to be retained would have a frontage of approximately 55 meters and an area of approximately 1.25 acres and would contain the dwelling and a garden shed. Planning staff have conducted our analysis as noted in the report. The provincial policy statement and the County of Middlesex and Thames Center official plans generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas for a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, provided that criteria has been satisfied. Staff are satisfied that the criteria has generally been met. Any issues regarding the location of septic system and well can be addressed through conditions of consent. Planning staff are satisfied that the subject applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement and in conformity with both the county and Thames Center official plans. In regards to agency comments received during the circulation of the subject applications, the county engineer, the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, the drainage superintendent, and the director of public works have indicated no comments or concerns. The chief building official advised that the owner shall provide a surveyor's real property report showing the location of all buildings, well, and on-site septic system. No public comments have been received to date. It's planning staff's recommendation that consent application B15-23 be approved subject to the 8 conditions noted in the report for the reasons outlined in the report. Also, that zoning bylaw amendment application Z22-23 be approved in principle and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at a future meeting. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is the applicant or the agent in the room and would like to speak? Would you like to come forward and state your name and your municipal address? Thank you.
I live in London, 94 Butternut Grove. And the positive plan report is meeting our satisfaction. I have no comments, but am here to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thanks very much. All right, so at this time, is there anybody online or anyone who in the chambers who wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none. Any member of council with questions? Okay, all right. Well, if there are no other questions and there's no further discussion, then the public meeting is now closed and council can make their decisions on the application. In this particular case, there are 2 required, one for consent and one for zoning. So there's a recommendation for approval of consent application B15-23, including 8 conditions as included on the agenda. And do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Crockett and seconded by Deputy Mayor Smybert. All in favor? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. McLeod. And then we will move on then to a recommendation for approval of zoning bylaw amendment Z22-23. And do I have a mover for this? Deputy Mayor Smybert and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? And that motion carries as well. Thank you. All right, we'll move on now to item number 5.2 on your agenda. Consent application B 16-23 and zoning bylaw amendment application Z 24-23. Patricia Cornelia Wooters applicant, Monteith Ritzma Phillips Professional Corporation as agent, and for property at 21656 Heritage Road. Overview by the planner is Alana again. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of the consent application is to facilitate the disposal of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation. The purpose of the rezoning application is to rezone the balance of the farm to prohibit any new residential use. So the property is a 103-acre farm located on the east side of Heritage Road and south of Thorndale Road. The property is used primarily for the cultivation of field crops. The farm contains a single detached dwelling, an accessory building in the form of a storage shed, and several farm buildings, including a grain bin, barn, and shed. The dwelling is serviced by a private well and septic system. According to the Thames Center official plan, the lands are designated agricultural and they're also zoned agricultural. The lands to be severed would have a frontage of approximately 70 meters along Heritage Road and an area of approximately 1.6 acres. The lands to be retained would have an area of approximately 97.5 acres, and the applicants advise that the accessory storage shed is to be retained on the lands to be severed along with the dwelling, while the farm buildings are to be removed. Planning staff have conducted our analysis as noted in the report. The provincial policy statement and the county and Thames Center official plans generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas for a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, provided that criteria has been satisfied. Staff are satisfied that the criteria has generally been met. Any issues regarding the location of septic system and well removal of buildings can be addressed through conditions of consent. Prohibit any future residential uses of the land to be retained. A site-specific agricultural A-45 zone is being requested. Planning staff are satisfied that the subject applications are consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with both the county and Thames Center official plans. In regards to agency comments received during the circulation of the applications, the county engineer, the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, Hydro One, and the Director of Public Works advised no concerns or comments. The drainage superintendent advised drainage reassessments will be required. The chief building official advised the applicant shall provide a surveyor's real property report for the lands to be severed. Also, the applicant shall be required to remove from the property all debris resulting from the demolition of agricultural buildings. No public comments have been received to date. Planning staff recommend that consent application B 16-23 be approved subject to the 9 conditions noted in the report for the reasons outlined in the report. And also that zoning bylaw amendment application Z 24-23 be approved in principle, and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at a future meeting. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. All right, is the applicant or the agent in the room and wishes to speak?
They're online, Your Worship. I'm just moving them over.
Okay.
The agent, you may go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can see me. I always get this last minute kind of flutter in my stomach when we're doing Zoom. I do it for court as well, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, so thank you for having us. I think that Patricia Wooters has also joined and she's probably listening. Thank you to the planner and thank you to council for listening. There's no mystery here or surprises. All of the conditions that the planners outlined are things that we expected. Basically keeping the house and the one shed that by the actual sketch is a little bit hidden by the evergreen trees, but that's the shed that's to be kept. And then the accessory barn buildings are quite old and will be removed. And that's what's expected. And again, very straightforward. If anyone has any questions, happy to answer them, but the planner has done a good job presenting.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody from the public who has? Okay, Ms. Wooders, did you wish to speak?
She might not know to unmute.
No,
but
thank
she
you.
wanted-
Kathy said it all. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So then is there anyone online, Jenna, and anyone in the room who wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none then. Okay. Any questions on this particular item from members of council? Pretty straightforward. All right, then. At this point, then, we will close the public meeting. There being no further discussion, the public meeting is now closed and council can make their decisions on the applications. And again, will be, two are required, one for consent and one for zoning. So there's a recommendation for approval of consent application B16-23, including 9 conditions as included on the agenda. Do I have a mover for this? Councillor Heeman and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Motion carries. And we'll move down to recommendation for approval of zoning bylaw amendment Z24-23. And again, do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Crockett and seconded by Deputy Mayor Smybert. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 5.3 zoning bylaw amendment application Z21-23 Arts Can Holdings Inc., the applicant, and Stuart Finlater as the agent. Property address is 3062 Cromarty Drive. An overview of the application, Mr. Bancroft.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose and effect of this application is to rezone the subject lands to a site-specific extractive industrial M3 category to allow a waste disposal site, high waste diversion as defined by the zoning bylaw. Just in terms of background, the subject property, it's a 46-acre parcel, and it's situated on the north side of Cromarty Drive, west of Lewis Road and backing onto Highway 401. Also known as the Canet Pit. This property is a licensed sand and gravel pit by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. And this property contains a building and scales ancillary to the gravel pit use. And beyond the licensed area, a single detached dwelling along with a drive shed. There's also separate laneways in place to accommodate the gravel pit along with the residential use. And upon the gravel pit license being surrendered, final site rehabilitation indicates that there will be no agricultural after use, considering the extent of extraction below the water table, and as shown on the map, the presence of a large pond. The lands are designated extractive industrial under the Thames Center official plan, and they're also zoned M3. The applicant is proposing to establish a waste transfer and processing station to accommodate asphalt, concrete, and non-hazardous building material produced from the construction, renovation, or demolition of an industrial, commercial, institution, or residential building. Such materials would be dropped off at the site in designated areas and transferred off-site to a third party for further processing. It is proposed that the license for aggregate extraction be surrendered towards the rear of the site to be used to accommodate the proposed use. There's also a building along with a series of storage bins required for the proposed use. And this zoning bylaw amendment, Your Worship, is being requested considering the existing zoning does not allow the proposed use. Furthermore, if permitted through zoning, the applicant will be required to obtain an approval from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks in the form of an environmental compliance approval, or ECA, as they call it for short. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as outlined in my report. And with respect to the provincial policy statement, it states that planning authorities may only permit non-agricultural uses in prime agricultural areas for limited non-residential uses, provided the prescribed criteria has been met. This is a prime agricultural area, considering prime agricultural lands are predominant. So I'm satisfied that the criteria as outlined under the provincial policy statement has been met, and that the land does not comprise a specialty crop area. Also, the proposed use complies with minimum distance separation formula from neighboring livestock operations. Simply put, these types of facilities are not subject to minimum distance separation. And likewise, on the other side of the coin, with the expansion of livestock operations or the establishment of new operations, they're also not subject to minimum distance separation in terms of siting from these types of facilities. Also, there's a need within the planning horizon for lands to accommodate the proposed use. The provincial policy statement makes it quite clear that these are all part and parcel of waste management systems, with, at the end of the day, promoting, encouraging waste diversion from landfill sites. And also, lastly, that alternative locations have been evaluated, and that there's no reasonable alternative locations which avoid prime agricultural areas. This site, Your Worship, is ideally suited for the proposed use, since prime agricultural land is not being affected, considering, as I mentioned initially, the lands are not being rehabilitated to an agricultural after use. Also, these lands are ideally situated, considering they are somewhat remote, backing onto Highway 401. And as such, there's no reasonable alternatives to accommodate the proposed development, which avoid prime agricultural land. Also, in terms of the planning framework from the County of Middlesex official plan and also from the Thames Center official plan, the proposed use would include the recycling of asphalt and concrete and non-hazardous construction material, considered to be ancillary to the extractive industrial use of the property. And again, similar to the provincial policy statement, those official plans recognize the need as an integrated part of waste management systems, the need to reduce, reuse, recycle waste in terms of diverting waste from landfill sites. Also, Your Worship, the Thames Center official plan outlines criteria used to evaluate zoning bylaw amendment applications. And going through the criteria, I am satisfied that this criteria has been met. So based on the foregoing, as outlined in my report, this proposal is consistent with provincial policy and in conformity with the county and Thames Center official plans. I should also add, Your Worship, that should this rezoning be approved, site plan approval should apply, considering the proposed development and the additional buildings and structures to support the use. The site plan would also assist with the laying out of the location of designated drop-off areas and access thereto. In terms of comments received during the circulation of the application, we have no comment from the county engineer, no objection from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, no comment from our Director of Public Works. Our chief building official notes that the applicant should be advised to obtain a building permit for any proposed buildings and on-site sewage disposal systems. He also adds that given the proximity of Highway 401, that the applicant may be required to obtain a permit from the Ministry of Transportation. Which leads me to comments from the Ministry of Transportation. They have noted that because of the site backing onto Highway 401, that building and land use permits will be required from that agency. The applicant will be required to submit an acceptable site plan, grading plan, drainage plan, and erosion control plan. The ministry also requires all buildings and structures and features integral to the site to be located a minimum of 30 meters from the existing Ministry of Transportation property limit or the Highway 401 right-of-way. They also note that they reserve the right to request a traffic impact assessment. So they are seeking background information relative to the nature of the operation, to which they will respond to the applicant as to whether or not a traffic impact assessment will be required. Also, a sign permit will be required for any signage visible from the highway. In terms of public comments received, there was one written submission that we received following the preparation of my report. I understand it's attached to the council agenda, and that would be from Peter and Candy Boltby. They are situated on Lewis Road, southeast of the subject lands. They indicate in their written submission that they're not opposed to the application. However, they're concerned about impact on their drinking water. They are looking to ensure that their potable water supply remains free of contaminants through necessary checks and balances or provision made to upgrade to municipal water. Staff did follow up with those concerned neighbors to advise that there's no municipal water available south of Dorchester, and that this proposed use is required to comply with provincial regulations by obtaining an environmental compliance approval from the governing ministry. So it's staff recommendation, Your Worship, that the application be approved in principle, provided the requested zoning envelope is set back at least 30 meters from Highway 401, as requested by the Ministry of Transportation, and subject to a holding provision, and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bancroft. So at this point, is the applicant or the agent available to speak or wanting to speak?
The agent is being promoted right now, Mr. Finlater. Go ahead, Mr. Finlater.
Can you hear me?
So it's a little weak. Try again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. I would just like to say that I agree and completely with Mr. Bancroft's report. I spoke to the owner, Mr. Arts, regarding the report, and he's fine with the report and the recommendations that are contained within it. We are fully aware that we're going to need to complete a site plan, acquire the ECA from the Ministry of Environment. We're also going to have to amend the aggregate license to remove this portion of land from the licensed area, and that we are going to have to satisfy the MTO regarding any concerns that they may have. So having said that, I think Mark's covered it off very well. And I would just ask council to support Mr. Bancroft's recommendation. And if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Thanks, Mr. Finlater. Are there any questions from members of the public, either in the room or online? No, seeing none. Questions from members of council? Councillor Lockie.
Through your worship, through Director Bancroft, for my understanding, will the environmental compliance audit address the concerns that the neighbor has about the groundwater?
Through you, your worship, it's my understanding that those types of approvals deal with those aspects. At the same time, this neighboring property owner is situated about 1.2 kilometers away from the subject site. So I don't foresee any issues considering those safeguards associated with the Ministry of the Environment's approval process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Heeman.
Is there going to be any backfilling of the pit to mitigate potential groundwater contamination?
Mr. Finlayter, maybe you could answer that question?
Qualified to answer that type of a question. That'll be done through the engineering. We've got an engineer on board that will be doing the that type of work for us. And as Mr. Bancroft said, all of whatever we do here has to comply with the Ministry of Environment regulations, which would include groundwater and so on. Mr. Arts actually applied for an environmental compliance approval back about a year ago, November of 2022. He got a draft approval subject to getting this zoning in place. So again, I'm not an engineer. I'm not qualified to talk about that, but absolutely we will have to make sure that the whatever we have to do to make sure there's no issue on groundwater, we'll have to do that or we will not get our ECA.
Thanks, Mr. Finlayter. Does that answer your question? Then Councillor Heeman? Sorry. I understand. All right, if there are no other questions from members of the council, then I will move that I will suggest that the public meeting is now closed and that council can make their decisions on the application. We have a recommendation that for approval of zoning bylaw amendment Z 21-23, provided the requested zoning envelope setback is at least 30 meters from Highway 401 and subject to a holding provision. Do I have a mover for that decision? Council, Deputy Mayor Smybert, seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Thank you. That motion carries. All right, moving on to item number 5.4. Zoning bylaw amendment application Z 23-23, John P. Roney and Sharon Ireland applicant, Sharon Ireland agent. Property is 20162 Missouri Road. An overview of the application by the Director of Planning and Services, Mr. Bancroft, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an application to rezone the subject property to recognize an existing additional residential unit or ARU. The subject property, it's a 40-hectare farm situated on the west side of Missouri Road, north of Dundas Street. The lands are used for farming purposes and contain related buildings and structures along with a single detached dwelling and an ARU, all of which are generally clustered in a central location on the farm. These lands, for the most part, are designated agricultural and also zoned for agricultural purposes. Back in 1999, a second unit was constructed on the farm for the purposes of accommodating a family member or farm help and allowed through a temporary rezoning approval. Those types of approvals are permitted for garden suites for a maximum of 10 years. Followed by subsequent renewals to a maximum of 3 years. Considering the temporary use rezoning has recently expired, and also the planning framework has changed in encouraging and allowing ARUs, The applicants are now seeking this approval as a permanent housing solution. And just for background, the existing single detached dwelling has a floor area of about 357 square meters, whereas the ARU is secondary in size with a floor area of 134 square meters. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, as outlined in my report. At the provincial level, we have policy direction to encourage an appropriate range and mix of housing types, including ARUs to meet long-term needs. And the same direction is echoed not only in the Middlesex County official plan, but also in the Thames Center official plan. Also, there is policy direction as outlined in our plan for the evaluation of zoning bylaw amendments. And that evaluation is laid out in my report. So in all, based on my analysis outlined in my report, I'm satisfied that this proposal is consistent with provincial policy and it's in conformity with the Middlesex County official plan along with the Thames Center official plan. In terms of the circulation of this application, no issues were identified, Your Worship, from circulating agencies, including the county engineer, the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, the Director of Public Works, and also our Chief Building Official. Also, no responses have been received from the public. So it's my recommendation that application for zoning bylaw amendment Z23-23 be approved in principle, and that staff be given direction to prepare the necessary amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bancroft. So at this point is the applicant or the agent, would you like to come forward, please? Just state your name and your municipal address.
My name is Sharon Ireland and I live at 20162. I am the applicant and the agent, and this is my dad.
John wrote it.
And we just want to thank you for considering the application to move it to a permanent dwelling. The temporary dwelling has worked out really well for us for the last 24 years that we've been there. It's worked out well for the community. We've been involved with the community. Our kids have grown up there, and we now have 3 generations living on the farm using the 2 buildings that we have. And so we would like to make it a permanent arrangement and be part of the community permanently.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there anyone online or in the room wanting to speak? No. Okay, that's fine then. Any questions from council? Councillor Heeman.
Just a comment. Again, we had a similar application last planning meeting, and I think that these accessory dwellings are a really good example of how we can keep family farms viable. And again, I think that it's you guys were ahead of your time, and I'm glad that the policy has caught up with the reality, and that this hopefully alleviates having to reapply over and over. So applaud this initiative.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, at that, there's no other discussion, then the public meeting is now closed and council can make their decision on the applications. Is there a recommendation for approval? Pardon me. Of zoning bylaw amendment Z23-23. And do I have a move? Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Thanks very much for coming in. Right. At this point, I would like a mover and a seconder that the planning public meetings adjourn at 5:39 p.m. in order to sit as a committee of adjustment pursuant to the Planning Act to consider minor variance application A8-23. Deputy Mayor Smyber and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. So under Committee of Adjustment, item number 6.1, minor variance application A-23, Stephen Helmers and Lisa Helmers, applicant, and the property address is 3933 Elgin Road. Overview by the planner, Ms. Curtis. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose and effect of this application is to seek relief from the Thames Center zoning bylaw as it relates to the maximum floor area requirement for accessory buildings to facilitate the construction of a detached garage. So the subject property is a 0.72 acre residential lot located on the west side of Elgin Road and north of Mossley Drive in the hamlet of Mossley. The lot contains a single detached dwelling, approximately 160 square meters in size, and two existing sheds being 14.86 square meters and 17.83 square meters in size. The dwelling is privately serviced by a well and septic system. The lands are designated hamlet residential and are also zoned hamlet residential. The applicants are proposing to construct a two-car garage and a storage area with a floor area of 66.89 square meters. Although the size of the detached garage is less than 90 square meters, the combined floor area of the garage and the two existing accessory buildings would total 99.59 square meters, which exceeds the permitted total maximum floor area of 90 square meters in a residential zone. The detached garage is to be located at the end of the driveway and at least 1 meter from the side lot line. The garage would meet all other requirements of the hamlet residential zone. Planning staff have conducted our analysis where the variance was evaluated against the 4 tests of a minor variance and are satisfied that the proposal meets all 4 tests in that the effects of the variance can be considered minor in nature, can be considered an appropriate use of the land, and the variance meets the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. Unacceptable adverse impacts on neighboring lands are not anticipated, given that the detached garage would be located in the rear yard at least 1 meter from the property line. Also, the neighboring property to the north contains a deciduous tree in the front yard adjacent to the location of the proposed garage, which would assist with mitigating any visual impacts of the additional accessory building on the property. It's also important to note that the increase in floor area is not anticipated to increase the usability of the accessory buildings beyond what would be considered reasonable for a hamlet residential lot. In regards to comments received during the circulation for this application, no public comments have been received to date. No comments or concerns were identified by the county engineer, Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, drainage superintendent, director of public works, or the chief building official. Planning staff recommend that minor variance application A8-23 be approved for the reasons outlined in the report. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. So any additional information in terms of the applicant or the agent? No. Okay. Anyone online or in the room wishing to speak to the issue? No? Okay. Any questions from council? All right. In that particular case, then there's a recommendation for approval of minor variance application A8-23. Do I have a mover for this? Deputy Mayor Smyber and seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. So at this time, I need a mover and a seconder for that the Committee of Adjustment adjourn at 5:44 p.m. and council reconvene its regular meeting. Deputy Mayor Smyber and Councillor Lockie, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, so up next is item number 7, a delegation regarding Oakwood Place in Dorchester, construction costs. I'd like to welcome Mr. Jim Vincent, who is a resident of Thames Center. So Mr. Vincent, if you could just come forward, have a seat at the delegation table, and you have about 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay. Well, we're still quite concerned. We've been told of varying amounts of monies that's going to be costing us. And with me being a retiree, I'm very concerned because everything that this costs me comes out of my savings and I have no way to recuperate that. So if we're talking $30,000-$40,000, which I have no idea, I'd like to know at this time what those costs are. And why are we being, there's construction costs in there. Why would that go to the residents? I presume you've all had a chance to read my paper. And if you have any questions of me, I'd be more than happy to answer what I can. But I think at this time, I would rather have answers from you. We didn't need this. There were no studies done to show that we did. The last study that was done there was done in 2002. And there hasn't been another one since. We feel we were just thrown at this all of a sudden, piecemeal, rather than having something that was actually in the works for a number of years. I do know that the school board turned down the addition twice before it came to fruition. And things seem to happen in a very, very quick manner with no regards to anything happening to us. When I went to the meeting, I asked questions and was told, well, we're going right by your place. Well, that doesn't tell me why I need a septic sewer system. It doesn't tell me why I need drainage, considering the fact that, you know, we're on 40 feet of sand. When I did my septic bed in 2011, I called the bylaw officer here and he told me how to do a test to see if there was enough drainage in the soil. And that test was to dig a hole 3 feet deep and fill it full of water, let it drain, fill it again, and then time it, see how long it took to go down 6 inches. That was a percolation test. I put the hose in the hole at 8:30 in the morning. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the hole still wasn't full. So I don't know why we needed sewer, storm sewers there. And like, I had a motor home for years. And when I washed it, I could watch the water go out the road and go down into the drain down at the end of the road, exactly the same as it does right now. Actually, unless it's a heavy rain, it doesn't go into the drain cavity that's on my side of the road. It goes past it. So I'd like to know, like, you have a picture here of the pipe that was out in front of my place. It was in good shape. I do have the copper pipe that came up to the turnoff, and it's in perfect shape. There's nothing wrong with it. The guy at the meeting told me that our infrastructure was at imminent failure, but he had no proof. But I do. It was not an imminent failure. And going on that, I believe that we should not be bearing any cost of that project whatsoever. Also bearing in mind that the plans were changed before the project even got underway because of the tree out front. I understand things had to change and move quickly. But part of that was that they were supposed to look after our grass and our tree, but they didn't. Not once did anybody anywhere come and water any of the grass on our street, nor did they water the tree. That tree is looking like it's in bad shape at this point. You know, that's been there since the early 60s. The kids play. It's a very nice spot. So I would like to know what kind of relief we can have from this cost. Because I know for a fact one person has moved out because of the cost. And there are more that are there. Our street, 10 out of the 12 people on our street are retirees. That's a huge burden to put on them when it isn't needed. 10 out of those 12 houses have septic beds that are less than 12 years old. The first one's lasted 60 years. I mean, I could go on and on like this, but I would, at this time, just ask that we be given an idea of where the costs are on this, why it was put on our backs when it wasn't required. You had the arena hookup right there. It didn't need to come down here. There's added costs to the peoples across the road here, down Oakwood Drive, Oakwood Place. It wasn't required. You're going through Porter subdivision right now. There's, you're not putting any sewers down there. And just tell me that we went down Oakwood Place because we're going right by your place. Well, you just went by all those houses down there. You have new septic systems that are going to be required for the new subdivisions. Why didn't you put it in now? Like, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little frustrated here.
That's okay.
And if I've offended anybody, I'm sorry, but I would like some answers.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Vincent. Is there anybody on council who has any questions or comments for Mr. Vincent? Deputy Mayor Smyberg?
Thank you, Mr. Vincent, for attending the meeting this evening. And I know that when we were campaigning for the election, that decision had already been made in terms of putting those services down Oakwood. I think the construction.
No, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You have to speak up.
The construction had already started on Oakwood at the time when this council was elected
Correct.
into office. We know that we can do better. And so we asked staff to take a look at best practices in terms of if we were to do this project again, or if we need to do it in another area, what are the lessons learned? What are the best practices? So that we can, if and when we do it again, maybe we can do it better. We do understand there's a significant cost. So we did take a look at the 2023 budget and we allocated additional funding dollars to help offset the costs. And I understand there's still a significant cost to each of the property owners, but I think we tried what we could in order to decrease what the amount was.
Yeah. But my point being was that in February of 21, council received a petition from us that showed 10 out of the 12 houses on Oakwood Place had already had their septic beds removed. We were not in imminent danger of having our septics.
And I can't comment to that. Sorry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, most of you here were not here at that time. But I think, Mr. You were here, you got it. Nothing was ever addressed to us at all. It was just heads down and go ahead, keep going. This daycare is a for-profit organization. Why are we being held hostage because of what they need? Can anybody answer that? Like, how much do you think I can absorb? Or any of the retirees on my street, or any of the retirees on Oakwood Drive, or the people across the road here? How much can they absorb? Like, we don't know what it is, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, but that's directly out of everything that I've tried to save. And that's what I have to live on for the rest of my life. And if you're going to force retirees out of Dorchester, that's a hell of a precedent to set.
Councillor Heyman.
Yes, thank you for coming forward this evening, and I'm sorry that the delegation in the past fell on deaf ears. And I think you're doing tremendous work to advocate for your neighborhood. You have a lot of questions and concerns, and I think if I can just kind of work through them and try to provide some context. I don't know if it'll be satisfactory or if it will provide you some peace of mind, but I think there are some options that we've tried to make available to relieve the financial burden. But I guess starting at the top is, why did it happen? I think the previous council made the effort to reduce the occurrence of doing road works and then subsequently doing water or wastewater works. And that's why we combined the roads and the environmental services department together to try and find efficiencies. And I think that's where this approach came from, looking at, well, if we're going to do the road, then there's an opportunity to do the sewer. That's the approach that was taken with the Thorndale King Street as well. So I think that's kind of how why there was that mentality. Whereas I think previously there was the approach of doing surveys and seeing where the status of the neighbor's infrastructure was. So I think that was a departure from the past. And again, you alluded to the daycare. There was high level discussions that I wasn't privy to, but I believe that the motivation was to secure the funding that had been promised by the province that they had not committed to for a number of times. And they feared that if the funding wasn't used, that it would disappear and that we wouldn't have that service in the community. So I think those are the two rationale as to why it happened. Whether that justifies it, I don't think it does. But that's, I think, how it came about. So, and to your point on financial burden, I think that's a very real point. And last fall with this council, we investigated and implemented the opportunity for longer payoff periods to 15 and 20 years for debentures, which I understand under these interest rates probably isn't as much of a service as we had hoped it would have been. But just reviewing that bylaw for connection, I want to bring to your attention that there is also a relief of hardship case. And I think that speaks to the situation that you're advocating for individuals on a fixed income. And I think that this provision in our policy is tailored specifically to that instance. And the way that it works is that you would not be charged until the sale of the home. So at the point where there is a transition and there is a sale of property, that would be another option.
On that note, I think that's a big hit to somebody who's buying my house.
So
to postpone this until I sell the house. First off, I have a letter from the previous mayor that I do not have to hook up until my septic is deemed no good anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm suspecting that's not going to be in my lifetime. But when I go to sell my house, now I'm going to get whatever number it is, 300,000, 500,000, 700,000. And the prospective buyer says, oh, well, wait a minute. Look at here. I'm going to have to hook up to that sewer system. And that's going to cost me 30,000, 40,000. How much money is it going to cost them? And that's going to cost me at that point.
Yeah.
So that is not doing me any favor or anyone else any favors. The high school the arena is where the closest hookup was. And that's where it should have went. That's what it was proposed to go there. And then somebody thought it would be a lot nicer to put it on our backs. And that's not right.
So just going through the questions again, as of the January 6th tentative update, I believe the estimated cost is between 19 and 21,000. And just to give you context, the average one for the King Street was around 17,000. So there is a disparity between the projects, but it's not.
We shouldn't be paying for any of them. We didn't need it. It's like, that's like, if I want to put up another building on my property and asking you to pay for it, you don't need it.
I understand where you're coming from, and that's,
But what I'm saying, I would like council to consider even more. I know there was $500,000 allocated from somewhere. How much money did the school board put in towards this? Is that in addition to that 500? So there was 1 million put towards it. How much money is sitting in, I think Councillor Lalaki, you said there was a surplus in the water system when you were going for council. Is that surplus still there? And why is there a surplus?
Well, the surplus, it's, it's separate. It's been put there by people that pay into the wastewater,
Mhm.
and it's set aside for future needs.
Well, this was a future need. Apparently, they wanted to put it in earlier. Like, you all have my things here. Did any of you have any answers?
For Heeman.
so just going back to the relief of hardship case, it doesn't apply to the purchaser. It would be applied as a lien, and it would come out of your profits from the sale of the house.
And there you go, punishing me again. That's my money.
Yeah. So
Whether you take
there's
it today or
there's
you
also
take it
the
20 years from now, or 15 years or 5 years from now. When it wasn't required, when it wasn't needed, there was no study that was done by anybody that said that this road's required or needed.
Councillor Crockett.
I think I just want to reiterate, and again, say thank you for your time and those in the audience that have joined you. As Deputy Mayor said, we were not in council when this decision was made. And I do know that our staff here has made an effort to answer your questions. And I just want to reiterate again that we acknowledge that this wasn't handled the best that it could be. And we're making strides to try and rectify that.
And what strides are you making to rectify that I'm the one paying for the previous?
I'm actually looking at it as a whole. There's a lot of people impacted on that road. I have a lot of friends that live on that road. I know that it's a hardship.
Yeah.
But we put in place 2 preservations this year. We put $500,000 towards it. That's being paid by all of the taxpayers here in Thames Center.
What was
I'm
the-
gonna finish first.
Okay, sorry.
Thanks. And Mr. Heeman put forward the motion to extend the debenture on the payment. So I think at this time, we've done quite a bit in the last couple months, and I'm not saying that this is over. I think what we're all waiting for is what that final number is going to be and what the timeline looks for that. But I think tonight, all of your questions that you sent forward, I know have been answered by staff, and it may not be the answer that you want, but they're making efforts to
They
do
haven't
so.
been answered.
And communications will continue to happen. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you, but if you're talking, you want to talk about costs, what are the final costs? What is the final bill on all of this? We were told 1 year after not completion, substantial completion, that we would have the bill, that we would know what it was. Well, that time has passed. So now what are we doing with this?
Mr. Vincent, I think, Mr. Craven, did you have a comment on that, please? And then I'm sorry, but we're going to have to end it at this. And thank you for your presentation. Go ahead,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Craven.
through your worship. The final progress payment was just submitted last week, so we're totalizing the payment, the cost right now. But the project is complete. The last payment came in last week, so we're right there. The letter that we sent out in January, I said that the option for payment letter would be handed out in the spring of 2024. So like I said, we're working on it right now, but we have the final payment in right now.
Well, I wish you could have answered my questions a little better, but thank you for your time.
Sorry, I guess I wasn't recording. I'll read that again. At this point, I'd like to ask that the delegation from Mr. Jim Vincent, resident, regarding Oakwood Place, Dorchester construction costs be received for information. A mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Crockett and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Vincent and the neighbors. All right, at this time, 7.2 on your agenda, presentation for final community services and facility master plan. Online, we have Dennis Kwan and Todd Brown. Okay, planning consultants for Monteith Brown. So go ahead when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. I'm just going to share my screen here. Oh, can I have screen sharing permissions? Oh.
Just tell us when you can advance. when you
Okay.
want to advance.
Sorry, I just lost my screen, so I can't see the presentation. Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Again, my name is Dennis Kwan. I'm the senior planner with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants. With me is Todd Brown. He's the project manager and the president and principal planner of our firm. Also joining us in this call is Claire Tucker-Reed from Tucker-Reed and Associates. She's also on our team. So we're here tonight to present the final master plan. And we'll be focusing on highlighting some of the key recommendations contained in the plan. And we look forward to council's approval of the document that we understand will take place later in this meeting. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, the municipality's current community services master plan was developed in 2013. So the new master plan that we have before you will guide and manage the development of parks, community facilities, programs, and services over the next 10 years. It looks at a number of areas, including indoor and outdoor recreation facilities, parks and open spaces, and service delivery, such as policies, programming, and partnerships. And the master plan contains 77 recommendations. And again, tonight we'll be touching on a few of the key ones tonight. Next slide, please. So the master plan considered a number of elements to ensure that it reflects the needs of the community. So it took into consideration existing studies and background documents, such as your strategic plan and your official plan. It looked at community demographics and trends in parks and recreation, as well as inventory and facility inventory and usage data, as well as community consultation. Next slide, please. So earlier this month, we did complete a public feedback process to test the draft master plan with the public. So the draft master plan was posted on the municipality's website, and residents were invited to review the document and to provide their feedback. And we also held 2 in-person public feedback sessions in Dorchester and Thorndale. And in terms of what we heard from the public about the draft master plan, it was suggested that the municipality's skate parks should be redeveloped to offer something more challenging than what is currently available, and to make it more engaging for users. And it was also suggested that the users themselves should be engaged as a part of the redevelopment process. We also heard that the consideration should be given to repurposing one of the tennis courts at the Dorchester Community Park to expand the number of pickleball courts. And that there was also there's also a desire for a large commercial kitchen and a community hall at the Thorndale Lions Community Center. And there was support for trail development with specific mentions to linking subdivisions and working with landowners and others to expand the trail system. So this feedback was taken into consideration as we finalized the master plan. Next slide, please. So as part of the master plan process, we were tasked with creating a vision, which is an inspirational message that describes how the department wants to be viewed in the next 10 years. And based on what we've heard from the consultation process, the vision statement identifies that the department collaborates with community partners to ensure that all residents are healthier by being more active and more engaged and more often. The mission statement expresses how the department will achieve this vision, and it speaks to maximizing parks and recreation opportunities by providing a full range of experiences, working with volunteers and partners, supporting unique community spirit, and promoting lifelong engagement in active living. Next slide, please. We've also established a set of guiding principles to help shape the master plan's recommendations. And these guiding principles speak to working together, communication and engagement, ensuring that everyone is welcome, environmental sustainability and climate change, accountability, fiscal responsibility, continuous improvement, and celebrating successes. Thank you. So the next set of slides speak to some of the key recommendations in the master plan, and we're presenting them in no particular order here. So update the wading pool and splash pad at the Dorchester Community Park and the splash pad at the Thorndale Community Park. Undertake life cycle replacement of aging arena components, including arena flooring, boards, and glass, and monitor the use of multi-purpose rooms and the gymnasiums and the auditorium to guide future decisions on indoor space needs and potential expansion opportunities. And explore the feasibility of incorporating outdoor fitness equipment at the Thorndale Community Park and regularly monitoring participation data, schedules, and demand to inform future decisions to increase the soccer field supply in Thorndale, potentially working with the West Missouri Public School to utilize outdoor school lands to meet long-term needs. Continuing with the facility recommendations, investigate the feasibility of constructing multi-use courts for basketball and ball hockey in Dorchester and at Crampton Park. Extend the paved pavilion surface at Harrietsville Park to accommodate a half basketball court and add multi-use playing lines to the court at Welborn Park. Resurface the tennis courts and the tennis and pickleball courts in Dorchester and Thorndale. And through this process, also monitor tennis court use at the Dorchester Community Park to determine the potential to repurpose one court to provide additional pickleball courts. And also construct a tennis court and 2 pickleball courts at Avon Park or Crampton Park, and add pickleball playing lines to the tennis court at Welborn Park. Construct an off-leash dog at Thorndale, an off-leash dog park in Thorndale, and guided by community input, redevelop the skateboard parks at Dorchester and Thorndale to incorporate a range of basic and challenging components and consider incorporating small-scale skate zones in the rural parks, potentially at Welborn Park, Avon Park, and Crampton Park. And evaluate public requests for new recreation opportunities on a case-by-case basis with consideration given to proponent-led business plans. In terms of parkland recommendations, add 10 hectares of active parkland in order to maintain a current service level of 3.9 hectares per 1,000 residents through parkland dedication and other acquisition strategies. Enhance comfort and accessibility features within parks, such as pathway development, seating, shade, and picnic tables. Engage the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority to establish a renewal strategy for Mill Pond Park, and review and update the 2016 Thorndale Community Center and Park Plan, and undertake a visioning exercise for the Dorchester Community Park to ensure that they reflect the needs of the growing municipality. It's also recommended that the municipality update the existing trails and cycling master plan with consideration given to creating and promoting linkages in Dorchester and Thorndale between settlement areas and hamlets, and working with landowners in and around subdivision developments to link new residential areas to the existing and planned network. Also strengthen trail linkages within existing parks and enhance connections to rural areas, including non-municipal trails and adjacent municipalities. And alone or in partnership with others, promote active transportation opportunities, such as creating walking programs, trail guides, and signage. So the next set of slides are key service delivery recommendations, and I'll turn it over to Claire to lead us through the next two slides.
Thank you, Dennis. And through you, your worship, I apologize that you can't see me on camera, although I don't know if that would add to my presentation or not. My role is to assess service delivery, organizational effectiveness, and the culture within the department and the community in order to respond to the recommendations that are made through the master plan. And I'm happy to say that Thames Centre Community Service demonstrates exceptional efforts to engage residents in active and enjoyable leisure opportunities. And the wonderful thing is that much of it is done in concert with community volunteers. The goal of all municipal community service departments, as Dennis said, is to engage as many residents as possible, as the benefits to individuals, family, and community at large are significant. So I'm going to give a sampling of about 8 recommendations of the 22 that surround service delivery improvements. The sampling includes increasing specific opportunities for adults and youth. During the consultation, many adults indicated that they'd like to see more opportunities for their age group. And we need to keep our continued focus on youth. Recent studies have shown increased incidence of depression, anxiety, as well as self-harm. So this is a group that clearly needs to be engaged. The next recommendation centers on being more active, and we know that being more active can assist us in living longer, healthier lives. And we received a D for a long time, a grade level D through participation. So they've designed Canada's most active community, and it records essentially people's active minutes in June. And it's a real way to get people engaged, but we know that resources may be limited, so we'd like to see the Special Events Committee work with others to consider participating in Canada's most active community. Thames Centre works exceptionally well with equity-seeking populations. We're asking you to extend that to work with residents who are underrepresented in recreation through various background reasons, just to address any barriers to participation and other ways of keeping them engaged. Girls and women, the next recommendation, 1 in 3 girls drop out of sport and recreation, 1 in 10 boys drop out. So we have about 28% of females participating in sport and recreation. We'd just like you to look at it to assess that participation in Thames Centre and work with girls and women to increase their lifelong participation in sport and recreation. We'd ask that you develop an access to affordable recreation policy. Sorry, that is, okay, great, you've already changed slides, sorry. Just to ensure there's about 750 residents who live at the lower income cutoff and may be experiencing an inability to afford recreation and sports. So just to work with other providers to develop a policy to ensure that everyone can participate. We'd also like to recommend that you develop performance measures in terms of utilization, participation, and satisfaction levels within the community and compare them from year to year. This will be evidence to inform future direction. And the last two center on human resources. So we're to ask staff to identify the resources required to implement the community services and facilities master plan. We have asked you to do a lot more. We know that your staffing is streamlined now. Your staff will grow, or your community will grow in size. So just to look at that capacity to deliver to an expanded population. And also we heard a lot during the consultation about the feasibility implications of on-site staff at Thorndale Lions Community Center. I believe that may be in the works, but we wanted to make sure that that remained a recommendation. And back to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Claire. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, thank you. In terms of implementing the master plan identifies the timing of when each recommendation should be implemented. So as much as there are 77 recommendations in the master plan, we've identified which ones should be implemented within the short term and in the medium term and then the long term, identified those as priorities over the next 10 years. So by adopting the master plan, staff and council are not bound to each individual recommendation. So staff will bring each recommendation forward to council through annual work plans to be considered and discussed and integrated into the capital and operating budgets. And staff will provide additional information as necessary, as well as additional consultation as necessary in order for council and staff to make informed decisions. So regularly tracking and monitoring performance metrics and targets is recommended, as Claire mentioned, which this may include monitoring population projections, monitoring facility usage satisfaction levels, program participation, and other data to help staff and council make those decisions to address community needs. And recognizing that the municipality's resources are finite, exploring external funding opportunities, as well as community partnerships to help with implementing the master plan's recommendations. Next slide, please. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to council for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the members of council regarding this report? Councillor Crockett?
Through your worship, thank you, Dennis and Todd, for putting this together. I liked seeing the results, especially the ones that I had some input in. So awesome. I just have two questions for you. And I apologize if it was in the complete report and I missed it. But with this master plan, what is the recommended timeline to follow through with these recommendations if per se we wanted to do all of them? Was there a timeline associated with that? And I guess my second question kind of levels up to that was, you alluded that all of the recommendations were in no particular order, but are the recommendations ranked in some way where you find some top priority and some maybe lower on the totem pole?
Yes, so if you go to the implementation section of the master plan itself, you'll see that the time frame is essentially 10 years. And we've identified within it recommendations in the short term, medium term, and long term to give you a sense of timing for those. Staff would ultimately bring those forward in terms of what timing makes sense. And part of that may be driven by opportunities. So if we've identified things in the short term and a partner comes forward, or if a grant becomes available that you could apply for, some of those priorities may be adjusted. But overall, our hope is that you would implement these over a 10-year timeframe.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question to that, do you reassess after completions, like say after like a 2-year, 5-year, 7-year term within that 10-year timeframe?
We've recommended in the document that staff essentially review on an annual basis to make sure that the master plan remains relevant, but every 5 years undertaking an update of the plan. The first 5-year period could be undertaken internally to look at, making sure that your population targets that we've used are in fact what you hit. And if you're growing faster or slower than anticipated, that may have an impact on the recommendations in terms of timing and need. And then every 10 years, you would undertake a more comprehensive review such as this. Certainly from our perspective, we're always available if your staff want to ask us any questions or have anything come forward that they hadn't anticipated or for clarification, we're a call away to assist in that regard.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions from council? Deputy Mayor Smyberg?
Thank you. It's not a question, but a comment, but thank you, Monteith Brown, for the comprehensive report back to us. I think that Director McDonald's going to be quite busy over the next little bit, but I think it's important that we have a plan moving forward so that we can align some of our decision making with that plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And I would
We
echo that.
appreciate-
Good job.
So I was just going to say that, we work very closely with Director McDonald, and I know Dennis and Claire in particular work very closely with him to make sure the recommendations really made sense for your community and were things that he would embrace as well. So we thank him and certainly thank council for your input throughout the process as well.
Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Heeman?
Again, thank you for this report. I have 2 points of clarification. One would be on the recommendation for additional parkland. I believe it's about like 10 hectares or 10 acres. Do you have any guidance as to the potential situation of that without going into specifics?
Dennis may have something he wants to add to this, but what I would say is that it's really a matter of what we've also have a recommendation that talks about parkland first priority. And so when you're looking at plans of subdivision, that you actually take the parkland dedication as opposed to taking cash in lieu, unless it absolutely does not make any sense. So really it's over a 10-year time frame looking at that additional parkland in order to maintain what you have, and largely coming through plans of subdivision or on an opportunity basis. But we did really want to identify that, obviously your community continues to grow. You're seeing subdivision development, intensification taking place as well. And so a need for additional parkland to accommodate some of the facilities that we've identified. We've also made recommendations about potentially relocating certain facilities that may not be appropriately located, that gives opportunity to some existing subdivision areas within your community. So really that 10 hectares is over a time period, and it's really within your official plans areas of growth, so your residential areas.
Think a follow-up?
Yes, and the follow-up would be with the public feedback about a community hall in the Thorndale area. Do you have any recommendations as to how to pursue that, or would that be something best addressed in the Thorndale site revisioning session?
Well, is this with respect to the request for a larger kitchen, or was that?
Yes, I think it was a larger commercial kitchen facilities and a community hall.
Right. So at this point in time, you've built a beautiful facility, and we know that a number of people were, I guess, we'll say disappointed that the kitchen didn't look the same as the kitchen that was there before. But we understand that the kitchen has been well received by many other people, and that you have had commercial operators come in and use the facility and have found it to be very well organized for their use. So we're not making any recommendations to make any changes to that within the scope of this plan. And in terms of future expansion, we don't see that on the immediate horizon. We really think that once you expand the facility in Dorchester, which you're currently in the process of doing, that gives you an opportunity to then monitor whether or not you need additional space over time. We've also made a recommendation in the plan that whereas utilization of the Dorchester facility at certain times may be higher or competing demands for time, that asking people if they would take space at the Thorndale facility instead, so that you can maximize those both of those facilities. So really, beyond the 10-year time frame is when we see any kind of expansion, unless your facilities become fully optimized or approaching full utilization.
Councillor Locke. Councillor Locke, you have a question.
Yeah, through your worship, through staff, I guess probably Director McDonald. So taking a look at all the recommendations on this report, trying to, total what the financial impact is. Do we think that it's feasible, financially feasible, to implement these projects within the 10-year timeframe, given what we generally would spend on, capital project with your department, and like that there's not really a lot of development charges, fees left, and the current expansion for the arena or for the senior center?
Go ahead.
Through the mayor, very difficult to answer. I haven't put a dollar amount on the 77 items and what that could all add up to, for starters. And secondly, in conjunction with the full municipal budget and implications for other departments and their spending. Capital alone, I know, is a challenge for the years ahead. We've been fortunate and done a lot of large capital budgets for this department. So capital related projects are one consideration, and then as well the ongoing operational costs linked to any capital thing. So that's an ongoing discussion that we have at the director's level, and something that will obviously be coming forward to council when we get to the budget. So it's really hard to answer that question.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Heeman.
I was just wondering if any consideration of the net reduction in space for facilities in the Thorndale Fairgrounds area was considered, just knowing that prior to the construction of this recreation center, there was two buildings prior to, and consequent to the fire, but there is a net reduction in space with the demolition of the Progress building to accommodate the new recreation center.
Well, I guess what we can say is that, we did consider that. And what we really, with the facility being relatively new and having different components associated with it, we felt that over time, it would be better to evaluate whether, I guess, how well utilized those various rooms are before you consider any kind of expansion. So this really would have been premature for us to make any recommendation until we really had a good sense of sort of post-COVID timeframe and utilization of what you've already spent a lot of money on. And I will say, just with respect to what was asked of Mr. McDonald, that we tried very hard with our recommendations to try to minimize capital items, recognizing that the municipality has spent a lot of money on recreation services, both in the past and currently, with regard to the expansion in Dorchester and the new facility in Thorndale. And so we were trying to balance that with sort of, I guess, some lower cost recommendations and more organizational elements to service delivery as identified by Claire.
All right, if there are no other questions, then I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of you, Dennis and Todd and Claire, for your presentation here tonight and all the work that you've done on the plan. It was a very good job. So at this time then, I'd like to ask the council for a mover and a seconder that the presentation by Monteith Brown Planning Consultants regarding the final community services and facilities master plan be received for information. Deputy Mayor Smybert and seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? That motion is carried. And with the consensus of the council, we could now move over to Mr. McDonald's report 10.1 regarding community service and facilities master plan final approval. Do I have consensus on that? Okay, all right. So, Mr. McDonald, if you want to go on with your report then.
Okay, thank you. Through you, your worship. You have before you report number CS 014-23 regarding the Community Services and Facilities Master Plan as presented by Monteith Brown Planning Consultants and Claire Tucker and Tucker Reed and Associates. Just now, the purpose of this report is for council to approve the updated Community Services and Facilities Master Plan, which is attached to the report, thus allowing it to become a recognized document for Thames Center, which will then, in conjunction with Thames Center's official plan and other related studies, help to prioritize initiatives and inform department budget over the next 10 years. Monteith Brown and Tucker Reed and Associates has already done an excellent job at highlighting the details of this plan. So at this point, I would just like to simply add the important fact that our consultant did an incredibly thorough job at soliciting input and feedback from the community, from staff, and from council, thus ensuring that we have a plan before us with a very solid and informed foundation. And I'd be happy to answer any further questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Any questions from the members of council? Councillor Crockett.
I think just to echo, you and your team are going to be busy over the next little while.
Well, we want to keep them out of trouble, right? Because we know that that can happen. All right, then, so do I have a mover and a seconder that report number CS 012-23 be received for information and that the attached final draft Community Services and Facilities Master Plan as prepared by Monteith Brown Planning Consultants dated September 2023 be approved? A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Heeman and Deputy Mayor Smyber. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you again, gentlemen. And Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
And now we'll go back up to number 8 on your agenda, which is the adoption of the regular council meetings of minutes of September the 11th, 2023. A mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Smybert and Councillor Lockie, all in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Item number 9, the consent agenda. Items listed under the consent agenda are received for information in one motion. Council members may request that one or more item be removed for further action. Nothing is being removed, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Lockie and Councillor Crockett, all in favor? Thank you. We will now move on to item 10.2 PW-FL-002-23 RFP TC 010-23 Heavy Duty Walk-in Rescue Award. Mr. Craven, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Before you, as you mentioned, report PW-FL 002-23 is the award for the purchase of a heavy-duty walk-in rescue truck. The purpose of this purposes report is to request the approval of council to award the purchase of a 2025 Spartan Metro Star MFD heavy-duty walk-in rescue vehicle to Safe Tech Emergency Vehicles at the tendered price of $1,321,686.36, including rebated HST, plus a contingency of $40,000. There were two bids received. One was from Dependable Emergency Vehicles and the other from Safe Tech Emergency Vehicles, quoting a price including rebated HST of $1.292 million, and the other one was $1.321 million, a difference of only $29,000. The two bids were received and evaluated by the Equipment Committee, and for completeness, using the council's approved ranking system, which scores based on specifications, delivery date, and price, Safe Tech received the highest score. An amount of $825,000 was included in the 2023 fleet capital budget for the purchase of a replacement heavy-duty walk-in rescue vehicle for the fire department. This budget amount was attained by adding 25% to the final price of the previous heavy-duty walk-in rescue vehicle, which was awarded by council in 2019 for a cost of $657,904. When questioning one of the bidders on the reasoning behind the extraordinary price increase in just 4 years, they cited unprecedented increases in raw material cost, supply shortages, and as well as an increase in the cost of shipping and transportation of these vehicles. Staff is recommending to award this purchase from two Safe Tech emergency vehicles for the quoted price of $1,321,686.36, including rebated HST plus a contingency of $40,000, and that the overage is of approximately $537 being included in the 2024 capital fleet budget for council's consideration. If you have any questions, the fire chief or I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Lockie.
Yeah, through your worship, to Director Craven, have we ever looked at, like, this is a lot of money. Have we ever looked at the option to rebuild versus buy new?
But I'll let our chief answer that.
Through your worship to Councillor Lockie. That is one option that we definitely considered in this process because we respect the overage that has come forth to our team. There's a National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, has a standard 1911 that recommends replacement of frontline fire apparatus at 20 years. So we are slightly over the 20-year mark for this vehicle. That is a possibility to, they call it actually refurbishment, with some in-depth looking towards what we could do with that specific truck. The amount of money that we would have to spend in order to bring it up to today's standards for safety, mainly just safety, would be the price of purchasing a new fire truck. In many cases, it's not always that case, but where we're sitting with Thorndale's current rescue vehicle, to bring it up to today's standards, more specifically safety standards, we were almost in an unmeasurable amount of money. We would have to start from scratch pretty much.
So we actually did get some quotes and they came in at $1.3 million.
That's a negative. Sorry, there are no quotes for that. Once we started looking into the upgrades, what would have to happen, that along with the fact that, sorry, Councillor, that specific vehicle is slightly different from what has been designed from the equipment committee this go around. So back when that rescue truck was created and really just a modified public transit vehicle, we have now gone with a fire specific vehicle, which has been the majority of the increases and differences from then.
I also have another question. So do we know why we only received 2 bids back?
I can answer that. Typically, I looked at the last, the 2019 truck. Typically, we only get 2, sometimes 3 bids on vehicles like this. There's only a few vendors that specialize in emergency type vehicles like this. We weren't surprised or shocked that we only received 2.
Yeah. CAO Barrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add on to that question through to Councillor Lockie, I have met with the CAOs within Middlesex County, in particular the local municipal CAOs who also have fire service. And we are in dialogue on a go-forward basis where we're having conversations when one of us requires a truck to try to bundle them together. So maybe there's 3 instead of 1 or 5 instead of 1, that in future we have at least a local buying group when it comes to large fire purchases like this. So we do have a keen eye in terms of how we can try to reduce some of these costs on a go-forward basis for what it's worth. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council? Deputy Mayor Smyberg.
It's just a comment. Custom vehicles like this are normally expensive, and even on a regular truck, you're going to have, those really high costs as well. So I support the recommendation. I know it's a lot of money. We typically don't get a lot of asks from the fire department though. And, I want to make sure that they're in the proper equipment, right? So they can respond to those emergencies. So again, I support the recommendation.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Counselor Heeman?
Just a point of clarification, are we, if we approve this at this time, is that a go ahead? Or are we still pending on, looking at this in the totality of the budget?
Mr. Craven, are you able to answer that? Or count, okay, CAO Barrick.
Thank you, Mayor, through to the counselor. If council approves this today, we would then formally advise the vendor, it's a green light, and we'd be obligated for the purchase. As noted in the report, council has approved about 825,000. That will initiate the process, and we do have some time, I believe, maybe up until 2025 to figure out the remaining portion. That's why we're suggesting to come back in the next few months to the budget process to consider, how to fund the balance.
Answers the question? Okay. Counselor Lockie?
I don't, it's a lot of money, and I'm concerned with giving the green light to approve this without actually seeing next year's budget and without, getting confirmation that there actually is room for it in the budget. And I think it would be in our best interest to wait until we see the 2024 budget to make sure that there is room for it.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to the councilor, I believe there's time constraint on us advising the vendor. So that's a factor here as well. If we don't proceed this time, we would risk having to go back to market in the future. And our concern is when we go back to market in the future, the price may in fact go higher than the price we have now. I'm looking at the fire chief and the director of public works, not us. So that has factored into it also. I would suggest for worth in terms of confidence, we do have designated reserves for these types of issues, including the tax stabilization reserve fund, and to help mitigate impacts such as this, and have share that information. It will be shared during the budget process, but share it earlier as well. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Lockie, another question?
So what is the date that we actually have to give them? Like, when does the quote expire?
Mr. Craven, can you answer that? Or
Your worship, I believe that still date is October 6th.
Oh, so it's coming up fairly
Or
quickly
yeah,
then.
it was a 60-day, it was a 6-day window. I think 3rd or 6th.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Counselor Lockie? You're looking puzzled.
I am, because that doesn't give any time to investigate alternatives. Like our CAO had mentioned, perhaps, talking to other municipalities and seeing if we could do any, group purchasing.
Any comment?
Yes, thank you. The fire chief to make a comment as well. So with respect to collective purchase, the fire service would be moving forward. Not necessarily on this one because the timelines that we have. So fire chief, I'll pass it to you as well.
Thank you, CAO Barrick. Again, through your worship, to Councillor Lockie, that it's a very valid question about the bundling, and that's something that more municipalities throughout the province are going to have to explore, because it'll have to be some sort of answer to the question that lies in front of us as fire vehicles continue to jump up. Unfortunately, we have, yes, the time constraint that there is right now. With this specified vehicle, it's very custom. It's very difficult to be able to get together and bundle vehicles that are this specific. And I would have a hazard to say, along with my fire chief from Thorndale, out of the 4 vehicles that are in Thorndale, this specific type of vehicle would be the most custom they have in their fleet. That being a heavy duty walk-in rescue. If we're talking about engines or pumpers or tankers, they're a little bit more straight across the board, and they would be a lot easier to bundle going forward, as the CAO mentioned, on a go forward basis. I would hazard to guess, though, to predict if we were to come across this down the road in 2 decades, it would be the same thing. It would be difficult to blend together or bundle together a custom vehicle like this.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I still have concerns. Like, are we asking for a Ferrari type of vehicle, or like, could this be more than what we need?
Thank you again, and a very, very valid question. And especially since I've just been here since the end of July and came in to look at the vehicle committee, the emergency vehicle committee that was put together in Thorndale and worked together with the SMT to make this package up. That was my first question. What is our needs? Where are we heading? So I did jot down my most important needs as how I look at this as the fire chief. Number one is being safety to our firefighters. When I look today actually at the NIOSH site, which tracks firefighter injuries and fatalities throughout North America. 15% of all firefighter injuries come from vehicle accidents en route to emergency calls. When I take a look at our current state of vehicles especially in Thorndale, I see a converted public transit bus in which our firefighters are responding with on every single emergency call out of Thorndale. This is our people carrier and our specialized equipment carrier. And when I'm throwing my firefighters into a converted public safety bus that is over 2 decades old, where we are actually tossing in extra emergency gear specific on what we need for the call and storing it unsafely en route to the call. I want to move away from that as soon as I possibly can. Safety is my number one priority. I do have several other points, but I touched on space for equipment and more operationally specific. Thorndale, the way they ended up operating is because they typically, especially through the day, most of the firefighters will drive their personal vehicles to the call based on whether they're at work, away from the station, compared to nighttime responses. This vehicle houses also all of their personal protective equipment. So they have 25 sets of PPE, as we call it, stored in this vehicle as well. We need the room. It's not happening right now. We have gear, boots, gloves, pants, coats, everything being stored in with rope rescue gear, jaws of life, hydraulic extrication tools. And the way it's unsafely being stored is not adequate, in my opinion, in
Okay.
staff's opinion.
You had me at unsafe.
Thank you, Councillor Locke.
I just want to make one little comment. I'm glad you said that because I was beginning to wonder, because I'm showing my ignorance here, what an actual walk-on means. It means that everything is there. Is that what that means? Or what does walk-on mean?
Your worship, I think I'm gathering your question properly here, but a walk-in rescue, we have a lot of equipment stored on the vehicle itself, as well as a place to come in and dress or de-dress after we're contaminated at a call. So walk-in refers to a place to actually be inside shelter. We'll call it that.
Now, I think CAO Barrick had a question and then Councillor Heeman.
Thank you, Mayor. So more of a comment with respect to the chief did a wonderful job explaining the safety aspect. And I wanted to add on the financial component of the question. We're cognizant as well of the taxpayer dollars. And that's why we're taking an approach of measure twice and cut once. The cash flow required the balance isn't necessary until about 2025. So if it was required upfront, we would be having a very different conversation, but we do want to take the extra time to be able to make sure we're providing options to council on the overage that kind of smooth out and it's not a sticker shock necessarily. That's why the report references use of different reserve accounts or contribution to reserves, as well as we're currently going through prioritization of capital And I would remind members of council that there was a 2022 surplus of about $1.4 million. That was council decided what they did with that. I'm not suggesting that's going to be the number for 2023, but they're likely to be a 2023 surplus to consider as well. So we're going to factor all those components in to try to bring council some options that kind of smooth over the next little while, if that provides a level of confidence as well, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Now, Councillor Heeman.
Just gonna echo some comments I've made in the past when we've looked at these when you get that sticker shock. And I think we have to remember that we have a volunteer fire service. I think our firefighters give up a lot to provide that service to us, and they don't ask for much. And when they do, I think it's behooves us to supply them with the equipment that they need to do that job. And also, we saw the picture of the unit in Dorchester. I think it's important that we keep equal service levels across both departments.
Thanks, Councillor Heeman. Are there any other questions or comments before we proceed? All right, then we have the motion in front of us that's appended to your agenda. So a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Smybert and seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? And motion carries then. Thank you very much. The next one is item 10.3, PDS 057-23 road dedication bylaw for Mar Road south of Gladstone Drive. And Mr. Craven, please. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Mr. Bancroft.
Thank you, Your Worship. So you have before you report number PDS 057-23, which provides some background information with respect to the proposed road dedication bylaw for Mar Road, south of Gladstone Drive. My report outlines the background information as well as the merits behind passing the proposed bylaw. Through the processing of a consent application for a surplus farm dwelling severance, it was determined that Mar Road south of Gladstone Drive is technically not a municipal road allowance, even though the municipality has always and continues to maintain this stretch of road as a municipal road. These lands have since been dedicated to the municipality as a 20-meter wide stretch of land. And now the last piece of the puzzle, so to speak, would be for council to pass a road dedication bylaw. In terms of financial implications, there are none, considering this stretch of road has always been maintained by Thames Center as well as pre-amalgamated former North Dorchester Township. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Crockett.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Bancroft. So just to confirm now, both the north and the south segment of Mar Road will be considered a municipal road and be serviced by the township.
Through you, Your Worship, perhaps Director Craven can answer that question. Thank you.
Through Your Worship, I believe we are maintaining both north and south of. I can confirm that with our transportation department tomorrow, but I believe we are currently doing both.
Perfect. If you could just follow up with me, that'd be great, because I know that kicked up some dust a little bit when this came forward last fall. So thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, then I wonder if I could have a mover and a seconder that report number PDS 057-23 entitled Road Dedication Bylaw for Mar Road south of Gladstone Drive be received, and that council pass the implementing bylaw dedicating Mar Road south of Gladstone Drive as a public highway. A mover in a second. Councillor Crockett and seconded by Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Okay, thank you. That motion carries. No unfinished business, I believe. So we will move on to notices of motion. The first one is 12.1 Economic Development Advisory Committee from Councillor Heeman. Would you like me to read it out? Would you want to go for it? Okay. Everybody's had a chance on council to read through this one. So at this point, could I ask for a mover and a seconder? Councillor Lockie, and seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. And the next one, 12.2, the comprehensive services. It is also on your agenda. A mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Okay. And the community garden pilot project is item number 12.3, moved by or instituted by Councillor Crockett. So you were moving this motion. You want to speak to it? No, you're good.
I just wanted to preface it with a little bit that this was excellent timing with the community services master plan, as I believe this aligns pretty close to recommendation 44. So yes, I would like to move it.
All right, we have the motion is moved by Councillor Crockett and a seconder, Councillor Lockie. All in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. I don't believe there's any new business, or is there anything? Nothing. Okay. Then we'll move on to bylaws. So the motion is that bylaws 86-2023 through 88-2023 be adopted as presented. And the bylaws are listed on your agenda under 14.1, 14.2, and 14.3. A mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Smybert, and seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Okay. I'm just going to change things up just slightly before we go into closed session to let you know about the upcoming meeting schedule. So the next meeting is Monday, October the 16th at 5 p.m. And this is one that we're going to be holding in the Lions Community Center at 265 Upper Queen Street in Thorndale. It is then followed by a Monday back, another meeting back here in the chambers on Monday, October the 30th at 5 p.m. Now, council will now move into closed session meeting for which there will be no live streaming. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Smybert and Councillor Crockett. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, Your Worship. I would like to make an amendment to this motion if possible. If before we go into closed session, we can amend the recommended motion to include and that council appoint the CAO as deputy clerk for the purposes of acting as clerk for the closed session portion of the meeting.
Okay, you're moving that. And a seconder? Councillor Lockie. All in favor? The motion carries then. Thank you. All right. So then as far as the closed session, I don't believe we have a mover in a second. The amendment, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Okay. All right then. All in favor? I just want to clarify here. Okay. All right. The motion carries then. All right. So we'll now be going into closed session. During closed session, the council gave direction to the CAO regarding recommendations provided in the municipal services inventory. Recommendation and confirmatory bylaw that bylaw 89-2023 being the confirmatory bylaw be approved. 17.1 bylaw 89-2023 being a confirmatory bylaw. At this point, I would like to call for a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. Move the confirmatory bylaw by Deputy Mayor Liebert and seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Now we will move for adjournment. Councillor Heeman, seconded by Councillor Crockett. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.